Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
All right, we've got Donnie Vincent on the show today. It's quite an entrance that we have. We'll do a whole really cool entrance to this, Donnie, that's going to blow you away. Have you even listened to one of our podcasts that we've done together?
No.
Yeah, I didn't figure you would. Do you listen to podcasts?
I don't. I've just started to. But I don't enjoy my voice. I don't enjoy listening to my voice.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, why?
I don't know. It just, I don't know. It just gets in my head, and then sometimes, then I'll overanalyze, or I'll analyze what I said or talked about, and these things are off the cuff always, and so you're just giving your opinion, or you're stating something, and certainly not scripted or orchestrated in any form or fashion, right? So we're just having a conversation, and then you listen to it back, and then instantly you give your answer or your response, and within, you listen to it back, and instantly you have a better response in your head, right?
Yeah,
because it's the second time around. So so invariably you listen to it and you're like, it's like taking a test in college, and then you get a couple of layups wrong, and you just want that time back.
Yeah, it's kind of like you recall conversations, and you're like, man, I wish I would have said that to that asshole. Like, that would have been a great comeback.
Yeah.
Man, if I only would have said this, that would have been great. So, Donnie Vincent, this is your third time on the show. We did a couple 2-part series with you. Yeah, so we officially, this is your third time. So this is from San Antonio, in my house in San Antonio, which is a construction zone. I got to tell you, I walked Donnie through my house earlier, which is a fucking absolute, it's a train wreck. It's not even a good train wreck. It's like, wow, there is shit.
That's
everywhere.
Beautiful, actually. It's a really nice house. it's just in between.
It's in the tweener stage.
Yeah.
You could say it's an awkward teenager. It's got some big braces on it, and it's kind of gawky. But damn, it might look like a pretty good kid every now or in a few years.
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be really nice. Really nice.
Well, thanks. I can only tell I think my wife would be 100% responsible for that. So I don't do any of this. Not that I'm not into it, but it's just easier for me to just give her that. Just tell you, this is yours.
I think you could probably improve marriages all across America with that advice of when there's a reconstruction project, you just let her have it, just let it buck, and then the guys just walk in at the end and say, "Great job, honey." No matter what. You did an amazing job. Amazing job. And I'm sure they would. For the most part, they do everything better than men. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yep.
We've hired a lot of females.
Yeah.
And,
well, I'm not being coy. This isn't a ploy. This isn't I truly believe they do 99% of everything better.
Wow.
Yeah.
99%.
That sounds high, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. 98.
Professional football, would that be?
See, that's one of the bugaboos, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Bench pressing 400 pounds, another bugaboo, although I can't do that unless we're going to break it down into several small sets and add it.
I could do 400 reps of one. I could do that.
So there you go. Yeah, I definitely think, in my experience, I've had, things that have very much frustrated me. I've watched a coworker or counterpart do handily. A female coworker or counterpart do handily.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because before you were in your current profession, what would you classify your current profession as?
Filmmaker, I guess.
Yeah.
Which seems like a loosely fitting term, but yeah, I would say filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if any of you need to check out Donnie, I mean, if you haven't seen what he's doing, you need to follow him on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
I'm
going to put you to the
Donnie
test.
Vincent. Just search Donnie Vincent. Yeah, you'll find it. Yeah, just search Donnie Vincent.
What about your Twitter? What about your Twitter handle?
Just found out that's follow Donnie Vincent, I think, yeah.
And then the website?
DonnieVincent.com, DONNIE, Vincent like Van Gogh.com.
And then who's making your films? Or you make your films, but what's the company?
Sickmanta. Yeah. Sickmanta. Sicmanta. It's a made-up word. We just couldn't find a word. Literally, we couldn't find something that represented what we had in our mind's eye. So we made up something that phonetically was cool to say.
Completely original, and I would classify that. And I know that you're just coming off the Joe Rogan show, which was probably like last 2 weeks, right? 3 weeks since it's been since it's been released.
Yeah. Well, we did it live. So it was actually what's today?
Friday the 8th.
So we did it the 28th. We did it May 28th.
Okay.
So 12 days ago.
12 days ago.
Yep. 10 days ago.
I kind of wanted to talk about that experience just in general,
Sure.
And, because I know a lot of guys that listen to this show, they probably listen to the Rogan show, which I listen to the Rogan show religiously. I would say not every morning, but, I listen to like Jocko's podcast. I listen to Rogan's podcast, listen to a couple other marketing and business podcasts out there, just kind of rotate them through.
Sure.
But what was that experience? What was it like? Was it, because did you listen to Rogan's show before you went on?
I didn't.
Okay.
No, I obviously knew who he was. I was a fan of his, I'd seen him do his MMA stuff. I'd seen him do Fear Factor, things like that, and I knew who he was. But it was, I know everyone uses this word right now, humbling. Everyone likes to, be humbled. But truly, like having him message me on Instagram and say, hey, I'm a big fan of your films. I would love to have you on. Would you consider doing the show? It just is. It's cool for me because when I was in college, getting my degrees in biology and wildlife biology, I was hunting a lot, and I had college professors saying, "Hey, Donnie, like I really appreciate your love for the wilderness, but you need to focus on your studies a little bit more." And they were right. And I had family and friends saying, you've spent a lot of time in Alaska this year, and you're doing homework on airplanes, you're doing homework all night, your grades are suffering, and they were, but I just was addicted to this experience of being outside. And so it's just kind of surreal for me to go from family members encouraging me to buckle down more when I was in college to now all of that. And it's not just that hunting led me here, but it's a big part of who I am and what I've developed into. And so just kind of cool to get a message from Joe to say, hey, would you come on and do the show, when really my roots come from all the hunting that I did when I was a kid and that I do now. So it was just cool to get that call out. And then, just to walk in his studio was, inspired me that I need to like dress up my own office, because his office was really badass.
Like, can you talk about his office?
I can't talk about where it is, or who previously owned it, because people know where that location is. But it was a nondescript building on the outside, but on the inside, it was just cool. It was all painted really well. Everything was red and black. He had one big great room, kind of like almost like a giant garage, if you will, when we walked in, and that was a big full gym, big huge archery range. He had some cars parked in there. It looked like some cars that he enjoys to drive. Things that he might take out on a Saturday afternoon or something like that. They might even just be collectors. I don't know. They're just parked in there. And then you walk through this little kind of a bigger hallway where he has a big pool table. I think he's a big pool player, right?
He's talked about that a lot. Where he used to compete. Or,
I think so.
Right?
I think so. Like he didn't play pool. We didn't play pool. I'm terrible at pool, but I kind of wanted to watch him play pool. But because I know there's an art form there, right? And so he had a really nice pool table there, and I really would have enjoyed watching him play someone else. But and that kind of looped around into another big, basically kind of his office is in the giant shape of an H, if you will, with the middle has some small offices, bathrooms, things like that. But he has like some of his animal racks in there, like elk racks and things like that, artwork things. And then he has his recording studio. But it's nice. It was really nice, and he was a super nice guy, super nice guy.
That's awesome to hear, because I think a lot of guys, if they listen to the show, they want to know, like, is he the same in person? And I think this is one of the things we talked about. You're like, yeah, he's the same. He's exactly the same that I thought.
Yeah, he was same. It's super down to earth, and I just like his approach to how he does it, and I like his approach. I'm actually a little bit jealous. I don't know that I'll ever have a podcast. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know if it's something that I'll do, but I'm kind of jealous of like what you do and what he does, because you get to sit down with interesting people all the time. I feel very fortunate to be one of those people that's considered an interesting person to sit down with and talk to, but I'm a little bit jealous of him that he gets to sit down and talk to, not so much the actors and things like that, but just scientists, you know, and just he gets like this little. It's almost like he's reading a book every day.
Right.
He gets this little mini education, you know, whether you're sitting down with a genius military mind, or you're sitting down with a genius comedian, or you're sitting down with, you know, a musician or something like that. And then certainly like when you're sitting down with somebody that knows like animal sciences, or they're debating like animals in captivity, or even hunters or whatever, it's like, it's just really cool because he's getting a little mini education every time he talks to one of these people. And then of course he gets some goofballs on there, like you know, like I'm sure you heard of it, like the flat Earth guys. Like, I just love, like, of all the things, and like Bigfoot, fine, I totally get it. If you want to believe in Bigfoot, knock yourself out. But flat earthers, that's
an interesting topic, because the Bigfoot thing, I just find it laughable. Like,
I get asked all the time, secretly.
You've got to, right?
Secretly, people just at parties or whatever, or when I'm doing an engagement, they'll be like, "Hey, I just, you know, have you ever, you know?" I'm like, I'm telling you, I've never seen anything. I've never seen a foot. I've never heard a noise in the wilderness that I couldn't identify.
Right.
Never. I mean, at least where I'm saying that's some sort of bird, that's some sort of owl, that's some sort of deer, that's a bear. Like, I can put it in a category pretty easily. That's an insect, you know.
So how do you classify that way? Because when I see these shows, like, I have my opinion, right? If I'm cruising through, you know, looking at these shows, and it's like finding Bigfoot or some crazy ass shit.
Yeah. First
of all, I look at it and I think one thing, but what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about if you see something like that?
If I actually see something.
No, like on TV. Like, just like.
It's just entertainment.
Right.
Yeah, it's just people. And I believe there's people that believe in it. Like,
yeah.
I've talked to people that believe in it, and they go out in the wilderness and they look, and I think they want to see it so bad. They want to hear it so bad that, like, for instance, you've heard him talk about the knocks.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
We're like,
yeah.
Like, I've heard knocks in the forest 100 times in my life, maybe 1,000 times in my life. But what is it? I don't know. Is it a Bigfoot knocking a tree? 100% not.
Right.
It might. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a tree blowing into another tree. I don't know if it's a tree falling down. I don't know what it is, but it's not Bigfoot communicating with other big foots. Right. And so I think it's just entertainment, right? And I get contacted often by Discovery, Nat Geo, History Channel, where they want to sign me up to go look for Bigfoot.
I think that was because you talked about that, and I was thinking, wow, these guys, have they ever watched one of your fucking videos? Because literally, they wouldn't even entertain that if they had seen one of your films. If they had seen any of your content, they wouldn't even entertain that question.
No, I did the latest one that I just had to reach out to me. They were in the Amazon, and they're like, we're going down to do this whole big. We're looking at all of these artifacts and this Aboriginal stuff and all this tribal stuff, and it'll be super cool. And what we're looking for, we need a host of the TV show. We're looking for a PhD anthropologist or someone like you. So I was like, oh, okay. So you're looking for either a PhD licensed scientist that has a doctorate from a major university who has studied this their entire lives, or me. Like, that is, so what you're saying is you're looking for a guy that's willing to talk into the barrel of a camera and not get nervous on camera. That's what you're looking for. And then you're just hoping that it's sensational enough that people will watch it. So they can sell ads to it. That's all it is. It's trying to get people to sit on their couch.
Right.
I mean, look at the Bachelor and the converse of that, Bachelorette.
Bachelorette, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many seasons of those have run?
Too many.
Yeah.
Is that a good answer?
And then they start bringing in, right? Don't they bring in the talent from the previous year? So like, if somebody gets their heart broken, then they're the next. So they're literally just preying on Americans that they fell in love with this person from the previous season, and it's just. It's a degradation of the human mind. It's a professional, organized degradation of the human mind.
No, I would agree. I would completely agree with that. I think that, like, I watch so little TV, and if I do, it's like hyper selective. You know, it's on Netflix or HBO or something like that.
Yep.
We've we have a TV. We do have one. I know that you didn't see one in the house, but it's never on.
Yeah.
It's never on.
Yeah. I'm the same. I love movies.
Mm-hmm.
I love movies, but it takes me, honest to goodness, it takes me about a week to watch a movie, because when I do turn the movie on, it's at the end of the night, and I get about 15 minutes in before I fall asleep, because I'm usually sound asleep. I'm sound asleep no later than 9:30, very often by 9. Sound asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm about the same way these days.
Alarm goes off at 4 every day,
right.
and
what's your day look like? I mean, I'm really interested in this. I think that to add some backstory, I follow you on Instagram. You know, I think that you're one of the more, regardless of what you feel about it, you are one of the more engaging people out there as far as the content that you create, the lifestyle. I think whether you're conscious of it or not, that you're promoting the consciousness, I think, of that lifestyle. So for me, I do follow you not only because I know you, but I really like the content that you put out. And so some of the questions I think about is like, what does Donnie, what does he do? What, like, when you go hunting, I want to talk about that a little bit, but what's your life look like domestically? When I say domestically, I guess, you know, when you're at home, what are you doing?
So it's every day is kind of the same. I'm basically getting up at 4 ish. And I drive to a gym in Minneapolis called Los Campeones, means the champion, I think. And it's a inner city gym, and I just like working out there. It's a great dichotomy of people. There is not a single woman in there wearing makeup. There isn't a single, there's not a pretty boy in sight. Like, it's just, in fact, I think, I may be speaking boldly here, but I think probably a third or a fourth of the gym has spent serious time in prison. And in fact, one of their taglines is, "If you loved prison, you're gonna love loss."
Are you serious?
Yeah. And so I just like working out there, and I meet a trainer there, a guy named Sam Topping, and it's not that I don't know how to work out. It's just that he gets so much more. I just know this. He gets so much more out of me than I would get for myself, right? He just asks a lot of me, and I really like that. So anyway, so I'll train for about an hour, and then I come home. I have 3 dogs, and I'll take those guys on like a 3 to 4 mile hike, and kind of do a little power hike just to kind of cool down. Eat a bunch of breakfast. It's usually really mundane, boring stuff like chicken and sweet potatoes and broccoli or blueberries and salad mix or whatever. And then right now, in between everything, in between going on trips or whatever, I'm going in the office and writing for this new film that we're coming out with right now. And it's I don't think I've ever talked about this, but it's a process for me. I suffer for the writing. Like, I go into my office, and my office is incomplete. It's something that I want to get to, but I have, like sheep heads sitting on the floor and an elk head sitting on the floor, and I have elk pelts, and I have pictures leaning against walls, not even hung up. I have a world map because I love maps. And I go in there and I hang up a bunch of 3M big pieces of white paper on the wall. And then I'll go into Kyle's office. Kyle Nicolite is my editor, producer, and he's a very gifted storyteller, filmmaker, film student from Nebraska. And we will break down the film into segments. And so he'll get a skeleton. So we'll talk about the grand scheme of the story. He'll get a skeleton of that. And then we'll start breaking down chunks of skeleton. And then we have a full-time musician named Casey Olson. So he'll lay down tracks of music, just general tracks of music that Kyle can kind of edit to the beat, and then we'll get it broken down into segments, and then I'll literally start looking at a segment and thinking about the grand scheme of the story, and then trying to articulate that segment of film into writing, and writing it both conversationally, because I want to remain true to myself, how I would speak to you or anyone else. You don't want to overwrite it. A lot of people do that, right? They overwrite their voiceovers to where it's some big sensational thing, and you kind of lose the audience. So I try to write it conversationally, and then try to stay true to the story, true to who I am as a hunter and a man, and then try to also tell that tale. So right now that's what I'm doing, and it takes me, I've just recently broken down, it takes me about 10 hours to write. It takes me about 10 to 20 hours to write about 2 minutes of film.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long is this film going to be?
About an hour and a half. Right now it's about 2 hours in length. And so it came to me, nobody even really knows this either. So the title of the film is The Other Side. I think that's the first time I've said that publicly as well. But basically it comes from, it's a series of bear films, a series of bear hunts, kind of telling my progression as a hunter. Because when I first started hunting, I wanted to shoot a rifle, and I wanted to shoot it well, and I wanted to do macho things. I wanted to go to Alaska and conquer the wilderness. I wanted to shoot a bear and one shot, one kill. I wanted to come home. I wanted that rite of passage. I wanted to buy a rite of passage, right? I didn't want to earn it necessarily. I did, but I wanted to go on a trip and come home a bear hunter, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wanted to, I wanted that instant gratification of coming home and somebody says, "Oh yeah, have you ever been to Alaska?" "Yeah, I've been to Alaska. Yeah, I killed a bear there. Yeah, I'm a bear hunter." And so it's funny because this film is kind of depicting this progression that I've had over years and years and years of hunting. But really this progression took like 30 seconds because I went there with a heart full of ego and machoism and wanting to prove myself. And I've told this story a couple of times, but the very first bear that I saw, he walked out right next to me. I was sitting on a beach in a place called Whale Bay, and I was just sitting up against this clump of there's a big boulder where a tree had tipped over, and I was sitting up against this big root wad, and I couldn't hear anything, which was kind of surreal. So one of my senses was gone. So I'm sitting there on the ground, salmon all around me, bear scat everywhere. And, I know I'm going to see a bear here. And the first bear walks out right next to me, like 10 yards away. I had my rifle, and he walked out and just instantly changed my mind. Instantly I became, scientists or whatever might roll over in their heads or roll their eyes or roll over in their graves if they're past, but instantly I became a conservationist. Instantly I felt like I was embedded in that bear's environment. This is going to sound too spiritual for me, but instantly I felt like a bear. Instantly I was just watching him, and he knew I was there, and I could see it in his eyes. And when bears know that you're there, they won't look directly at you because, that's generally a confrontation that's going to happen. I mean, they will, but if they look at you, they're probably going to come. And so they kind of swing their head, and they kind of look around, they kind of look past you, if you will. But I was just watching his chest rise and fall. I was watching his nose, he's articulating his nose to smell things, and I could see his paws on the rocks, and completely disinterested in shooting him. Not only did I really forget why I was there, I didn't ever want to kill an animal from
wow.
him. I had no interest in it whatsoever. And so I had rented a boat. That's what I was living on. I wasn't guided, but I had rented a boat. And so this guy, his name is Ron Johnson, awesome guy, just a soulful, heartful man. I couldn't have hunted with someone I couldn't have hunted with a better person for the first time. Just a sweet, kind, soft-spoken man. And so he picked me up that night, and he knew something was up because I saw 20 bears that night, and I didn't shoot one. And so he picked me up, and we took the skiff back to the boat, and he made dinner, and we're sitting at the table, and it's glass common there, and the seagulls are squawking, there's bald eagles, and it's just one of the most beautiful places still to this day that I've ever seen. And he's like, "So how'd that go for you?" And I was like, "Oh, it's unbelievable." And he's like, "You didn't shoot a bear?" He's like, "I saw some," he could see me. He's like, "I saw some pretty good bears right next to you." And I was just like, "Yeah, I don't think I can do this, man. I want to, let's just watch bears, and we'll go fly fishing and stuff during the day." Cause the bears would basically just come out at night.
Right.
I was like, "Yeah, I don't think I can do this, and he's like, "Okay, well, let's just figure it out, And then I went out the next day, and we just talked every night about philosophies of wilderness and philosophies of conservation and hunting. And and it's funny, it spoke to me at the end because he said, "I've hunted with a lot of guys." And he's like, I think you're more a hunter than any of them.
Wow.
And he's like, I think you're probably a very good hunter. And I hadn't really killed anything up to that point in my life. And so he's like, I think, he's like, you do what you want, but I think you're going to regret not shooting a bear by the end of the week if you don't do it. And I said, okay, well, we'll just figure it out. And I did. I ended up killing a bear on the last day. And I'm glad I did. But it was, you know, it was a big experience still when I did. And the rifle went off and the bear just literally fell flat. There was no wiggling, no moaning, which I'm thankful for, because I don't think bears sometimes do, people refer to it as a death moan. Mm-hmm. It's just a bear's response to a fatal shot in the long range. And it's, I've actually only heard it once in my life, and I just heard it this spring for the first time. And it wasn't a bear that I had shot, but it was a bear that a friend of mine had shot. And yeah, it's just not something that you enjoy hearing. But that hunt right there, so that transgression that I just described to you, we tell that tale over what's probably going to be about an hour and a half in this film. And we use a lot of different bear hunts to do it, because even though that experience took seconds for me to go from macho asshole kid, I think we maybe all start out there.
Right.
At least people with less wherewithal, like I had, start out there. To it moved in just a couple of seconds after seeing that bear, but the enrichment of that experience, the color of that experience, the story of that experience just kept getting more defined every time I went into the wilderness, no matter what I was hunting, particularly bears though. So it was, I think it's going to be a really good film. And as far as like the nuts and bolts of the film, it's going to be our best work. Casey Olson is this guy that works with us. He's a musician, and he is a terribly gifted musician, but even his craft, he's worked for us now for 3 years, and his craft has just grown tenfold. Kyle's craft of telling stories and building the film and working together as a team has grown tenfold. And so like our cameras have gotten better. We've gotten better at filming. I've gotten better on camera, you know, just being myself. Like,
right.
You know, when you're first on camera, it's funny, you point a camera at somebody and they puff their chest up and they fix their hair and they clean the corners of their mouths and their eyes and they try to come up with some fantastic thing to say, like, "Ooh, I'm gonna melt your mind here." And it's like, you're not Brad Pitt reading a script.
Right.
Like, you know, and you're not an actor. Like, the more you can just pour into your soul, whether it be a fantastic event or a fantastic mistake, people are going to relate to that really well, because people go through their days every day with fantastic knowledge, fantastic inspirations, and fantastic errors, whether it be going the wrong way down a one way or burning toast or, you know, a bigger deal. So, yeah,
I think that's part of that's a huge part of your content and how great it is, because it's very authentic, but then there's authentic content out there. And the way that I look at your content is it's truly, there's art to it. And when you can tell a story with video, mm-hmm. and with authentic beauty in a way that I think there's really not a lot of people out there trying to do that. They're just really trying to get a story out in a specific amount of time. Yeah. They need to hit certain points that they've storyboarded it out. It's like a machine.
Yeah.
They're just making a machine to stamp it out.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that I think is really just impressed me, and one of the reasons why I'm a fan is because you want to tell a story.
Yeah.
And whether it's, you know, I think you brought it up in some other podcast, whether it's, you know, the way a leaf hits the water, or, you know, pushing a piece of like a pine branch out of the way. Mm-hmm. You know, those are the aspects of the outdoors that you feel and you look at.
Absolutely. And those are the things that, if you're there for the right reasons, and I don't mean you're outside. Mm-hmm. Everyone has a reason to go outside.
Right.
But I mean, if you're there for the right experience, then you're not just looking for a big bear. You're not just looking for a big deer or a class 4 rapid. Like even rafters or mountain climbers, like there's a whole bunch of things going on around you, and you better pay attention to them because it's a fantastic show. Yeah. Whether it be a hummingbird or a butterfly, or, you know, a few years ago we were in the Arctic Circle filming a grizzly bear, and it was pouring rain outside, and I'll never forget, like we started crawling. Me and William Altman is the director of photography at Sick Manta. He's this weird dude from Maine. He's been with me every step that I've taken in the wilderness. He's taken right behind me. I mean, the kid would, if I said, "Hey, we're gonna ride great white sharks next week," he'd be like, "Okay, all right, okay. So where are we doing this? And you know, what's the likelihood I'm gonna make it home? You know?" And like He's just all in. He's just all in. He's wicked gifted with a camera, and so. He lives in a little cabin in Maine that he built himself. He poops in a bucket. He has no running water, grows all of his food. He kills most of his food or raises it and kills it himself. He's a fantastic, soulful human being. And him and I were crawling across the tundra, and the guy we were hunting with, we were gone for like an hour, and we came back and he's like, "What in the hell were you two doing?" And we had found a ptarmigan grouse, and so we just crawled up to it, and it was walking along eating blueberries. And so we had just belly crawled like 350 or 400 yards, literally army crawled up to this thing to film it in the pouring rain. And he couldn't see the ptarmigan, so he just saw these two idiots belly crawling across the tundra for hours, literally hours. And then we came back, and he's like, "What the hell are you two doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we're filming a ptarmigan over there." He's like, "You know, you can walk right up to them, right?" And we said, yeah. But we wanted him to just be natural, and things are always more interesting if you film them at the exact level of their eyeball, right? So if you're going to film a snake, it transfers best or is relatable to the audience if you get down on the ground with the snake and you're looking right down his eyes. Then you feel like you are experiencing what the snake's experiencing. So if our camera's 6 inches off the ground near the grouse, like that translates well, rather than if we're just standing above it, right? So we showed him the footage afterwards. You know, he's like, "That's the best footage I've ever seen of a ptarmigan." Like, you know, and most people would just cruise right past that thing because it's not a grizzly bear. They're there for a grizzly bear, and so it's just little things like that. You know, I freaked out this year. I did a story for Men's Health, and there's a writer, a gifted writer with us named Michael Easter. He's a literature professor at UNLV in Vegas, and so he came along with us. And I'd never had this happen to me before, but I was standing there talking to him, and I was holding my bow, and my fletchings on my arrows are red, and my stocking cap is red. And hummingbirds are attracted to red, right? That's where they get their nectar generally from red flowers. And so this hummingbird had flown up to me, landed on my fletchings, like cruised up, landed, was looking at me, flew away, came back, landed on my fletchings again, flew away, came back, landed on my hat. Did I win something?
No, I got like all these technology devices connected.
So it was just, and it finally flew off, and I looked at him, and he kind of looked at me puzzled, and I said, that's exactly why I'm here elk hunting. And he was puzzled, and later on that night, he's like, what did you mean by that? I'm like, that's not going to happen unless I'm here doing this. And even though I'm looking for a big mature bull elk, and I'm engaging the mountains, and I'm checking everything out, like, I ended up later on, like a week and a half later, I ended up arrowing a massive old 10-year-old bull. It was a fantastic experience. But if I take any moment from that hunt, if I just go to that place as a little snapshot, I think of that hummingbird. That's what I think of every single time. Hummingbird moment. Just think of that. And when I drove home, it was like a day and a half drive home or 2-day drive home. I thought of that hummingbird, I don't know, hundreds of times. Wow. And I had this huge elk rack tied to the back of my truck, and I'm sure I thought about it, and I had people honking and waving and like thumbs up, but really I thought of that hummingbird, and that's why I'm weird, I think, is just that stuff I'm easily entertained.
I think that you're entertained in different ways. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I think I can relate just in the sense of, you know, I turned a corner several years ago, and I think we talked about it, but I was out and I was climbing all the volcanoes. Like I was just going volcano. So I was going Rainier, Hood, Adams, and I wanted to bag them, just bag them as fast as I could, right? Them. Just check them off. Yeah. And I was like halfway up Adams, and I was running up this mountain with crampons, just like running as fast as I could, and I'm like completely at like beyond VO2 max, you know, and I'm like, man, I'm not experiencing any of this. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not experiencing any of it. Mm-hmm. And I stopped, and I remember to this day I stopped, and I took a few more steps, and I sat down, and it wasn't because I was tired. Like I've been tired plenty of times in my life.
Yeah, of course.
But I was like, this is the fucking stupidest thing, mm-hmm. doing this. Mm-hmm. And I turned around. Oh. I literally just turned around. And I turned around because I was like, I'm out in the middle of this beautiful landscape. I can look across the mountains. I can do whatever I want. And I'm running to the top of this fucking mountain. Mm-hmm. The same mountain I've already been to the top of, by the way. But mm-hmm. I just wanted to see how fast I could bag all three of them within 3 days, or I forget exactly the time thing that I had like set on my, arbitrary notepad, Yeah. And I just said, I stopped and I turned around, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go kayaking today.
Yeah.
And I came back down, and I was like, what I wanted to do that day.
Yeah.
Because I was doing this thing just to say that I had done it, so I could tell somebody else.
Yeah, isn't that the funny part?
So I could tell, and I realized what I was doing it for. Mm-hmm. I realized that I was literally just running to the top of Mount Adams as fast as I could, which is no small feat. It's a fucking it's a high non-technical climb, but if I could get this time, I could go to my buddies and be like, yeah, I fucking ran. It's like 8 hours, dude. Yeah. But I turned around and I went kayaking, and I was like, you know what? I love this stuff so much. Why am I wasting my time trying to do things just so I can tell my friends? Because it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's just dumb.
And some guys, like, Everest is their thing.
Yeah.
Right? And
mm-hmm.
I've been asked several times in podcasts and interviews, like, you ever going to climb Everest? And the answer is absolutely not.
No.
Just if there was wildlife up there, yeah, you have a way better chance of me. If there's a weird, cool little bird that I get to see when I get up there, okay, now we're talking. Mm-hmm. But just to say that I walked past a bunch of dead folks and people do it and do it fantastically. I have friends that are expert at mountaineering, and they do it in spectacular fashion. They've saved a bunch of lives out there because they've put themselves at risk during bad storms to get people off the mountain and stuff like that. So I'm not degrading it at all, but it's just not my cup of tea. It's just not. And you get all these executives and stuff that want to go and do it just so they literally have their picture up on the office wall, and they're like, oh yeah,
look at that.
Yeah, I summited Everest, and I think that's really, like, for people, chasing this thing of happiness, right? And, mm-hmm. It's not money. Money's not going to make you happy. Like, a lot of people think if they have a lot of money, they're like, oh man, like, this is, I've made it. Now I can, now you can what? Now you can what? Like you need to be able to find it in the simplest little corners of your life,
right?
Because really, that's the stuff that you can't buy. That's the stuff that you need to surround yourself with anyway. And so, I just started to see that in the wilderness. And I used to do the same thing. I'd go hunting here for a week, then here for a week, then here for a week, and people would say, oh, so you're a hunter? I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm a hunter. I've hunted British Columbia this year and Alaska this year and all these things, and then I did my first long form hunt, I don't know, like 5 years ago. I went up to the Arctic for like 25 days, and it was just so awesome. It was just, when I got there, everything was green. It was hot out. Mosquitoes were out. Blueberries were just kind of starting to pop, and the moose were all in full velvet, and, the wolves looked kind of ratty, and it was cool. But I stayed there until like I saw fall starting to come, the leaves started to change, started to turn, so like instantly, I'd wake up one morning and that chill would be in the air. And I always think of, it's actually kind of depressing, but I always think of the bus stop, like that first chill in the air of waiting at the bus stop, or like school is coming, so like I feel that first like chill in the air, and I'm like, I think about waiting for the school bus. And so, but just all those experience, right? And then the leaves just fired up into full spectacular color, and then I got to watch them start, then one morning I woke up and the leaves are starting to float off the trees, and the moose are now all, they went from having velvet to their paddles were snow white when they scraped off all the velvet when they're entering the rut, to now their antlers are chocolate brown because they've been rubbing on spruce trees and all these different trees, and they're fighting, and now there's no leaves on the trees, and now places that I was getting my water are now frozen over, and the wolves are howling differently at night, and now they're howling with a bit more almost like a harvest moon or a hunting moon type purpose, and it was, I didn't kill anything on the trip. I didn't kill a single animal on it. I shot like 5 grouse because I was starving, and so I ate those. But that's one of the most rewarding hunts I've ever been on in my life, and I never came to full draw once. It was awesome experience. And so I just realized, like, oh my God, I've been going down the wrong road for a long time. This is the right road for me. This is the right road for me, and yeah, I love it. Live for it.
I turned a corner, I think, and I turned a corner as a long period of time, where that's like what I would do is I would go overseas for extended periods of time for 90 days, but then I would come back and I would go straight back into the wilderness.
Yeah,
and I would disappear, and that was my life, because I missed that. That's the only thing that I really missed, like rotation into the desert.
So you go by yourself?
Yeah. And I can't, the thing that I learned about myself during that time, I think, was just to appreciate it, because the thing that I longed for, and that still do, like I pine every day of my life. Like, I mean, I love my kids and my family, but they're the only thing really keeping me here, truly. And the thing that I miss more than anything is living in that environment where you can feel everything. Yeah. You can feel, the first light of the morning sun. You can feel the frost. You can feel when you've fucked up your shelter, and the rain starts pouring in on a fucking sleeping bag you're gonna have to live in, and you're like, you feel it. You feel the pain of a bad decision. You feel the victory of a great decision, but more importantly, you're feeling. And I think modern society, just the trappings of comfort, right? We have AC, we've got
it's terrible.
heat,
it's terrible.
We've got everything.
It's killing us, actually. I think it's actually, I shouldn't say killing us, but this hardiness that we had, or how our DNA works, right? How we were talking about earlier today, right? Our bodies go through an adaptation to respond to environmental stimulus, to genetic stimulus. Like, our bodies are changing. So we used to change to find food. We used to change to adapt to cold. We used to change to, walk barefoot, and to evolve into using tools, and to hunt dangerous animals with spears and bows and rocks, and so our DNA was, what we come from is legitimately badass.
Right.
I'm not talking about modern day badass, for real badass. Right. To now, what are we doing to our DNA now?
Oh, God.
Smartphones, air conditioning,
fast food,
automated automated cars, to, I mean, even air travel. Like, I was thinking about this when I was flying here. I don't even think about getting on an airplane. Like, I think about it when I'm in the wilderness, because I have to think about it, because the chances of us crashing is decent. Yeah. So I have my locator beacon strapped to my chest. I have my wilderness survival bag in my lap. I'm literally looking at the airplane like, how am I going to get out of this airplane if the pilot's dead? Where is the fire extinguisher? like I'm talking to the pilot, like where is your first aid kit?
Right.
Where exactly? Okay, show me like where we're going, so that if the airplane crashes, I know I have to get out, and I know I have to head west and perhaps southwest to run into a native village or something like that to get help and hit my locator beacon or whatever. But flying to San Antonio on a major airline is, you know, as long as I make it through security and make it to the flight on time, then it's just, you know, kind of like going through the steps. But I completely agree with you. And it's, you know, you do things like this, like I can never bring enough food, right? When we go, it's just, it's too expensive and it's too heavy. Expensive, I mean, not in physical dollars. I mean, it's too expensive in calories to carry it where we need to go. So you're not bringing enough food. So instantly you're imbalanced, right? So you start to just shed weight pretty fast. And it's amazing. You go on one of these hunts and after like 10, 11, 12 days, like you feel like a professional athlete.
Right.
Like you go to that thing, you feel like a sloth in the first 3, 4, 5, 6 days, but then you start to shed those pounds and your muscles and your lungs start responding. And pretty soon you're like, if I was like this all the time, I'd be a beast. Yeah. Like a real beast, you know? And it's just, you start to feel amazing. And then invariably the trip comes to an end, but you just, when you come out, you know, things like music is so much better. Pizza is so much better. You know, colors, everything, talking, like hearing another human voice, right? Like I used to, I did research in Alaska for several years and I have almost complete isolation for several months. And so I had a radio phone. So I would talk on a CB that would go to an Eskimo village that would then be relayed to Bethel, Alaska, that would then be relayed to whoever I was talking to. And so there's like an 8-second delay. So it was kind of cool because you'd pick this thing up and it'd be windy and stormy outside and you'd be like, hey, Evan, yeah, dude. So I saw a huge grizzly bear today and I saw him, you know, messing around with 3 wolves and the northern lights were out and it was just so wicked. So how are you and your wife and your kids? Go ahead. And you sit there for 8 seconds and then you'd be like, oh yeah, man, yeah, that's so cool, and like yeah, and you know all this stuff, and then yeah, and you'd say your whole bit, and yeah, okay, go ahead. And, oh yeah, it's my turn. So it's just like all these different experiences. Like the more out there you can go, when you do get to come home, it's just things are pretty sensational. And then if you live out there, well, then it's just sensational all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's the the one thing that my house, my previous house, was actually about 8 to 10 miles outside of Boulder, Colorado, up in the mountains. Oh, yeah. You can't really say that it was a house. It was a 700 square foot cabin.
Dwelling.
Yeah, with a footbridge across the creek.
Yeah.
And it didn't have, I had a well, but it didn't have a phone. And so I could come back, and regardless of what I was doing, I was still completely removed.
Yeah.
Because you're in sensory, for me, I was in sensory overload all the time.
Yeah.
Because everything's moving fast. You know, you're planning a mission, you're going out on a mission, you're talking on the radio, you've got people talking to you on the radio. You know, you're always looking for somebody to kill you. Mm-hmm. Like every fucking fraction of a second, you're thinking, I'm going to be blown up or shot or put into an orange jumpsuit for, not every second of every day, but when you're out, that's what you're doing.
I don't know what that would be like.
But it's sensory overload, and you just get used to sensory overload at all times.
Yeah.
And you get callous to your surroundings. I had to continue to pull myself back into some type of center. Mm-hmm. And the only way I could do that was isolation. And so I would do what I called was R therapy, which was rivers, reading, running. I would just stick to my R's. That's all I would do. And I would live a pretty isolated existence home. And one thing that I even with a family and a lot of these things that we have now, it's a lot of sensory overload, but the thing that I continue to come back to, and I still have a touch with that, which is I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be alone, and I'm completely comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. And those are actually goals that I set out throughout the year where I know I'm going to be able to go back to that. But now I see it takes me days to get back into center because I'm so off center. Mm-hmm. It takes me 5 days almost to get back to, oh, this is the shit that matters. Mm-hmm. Like
so, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but when you would come back from mission, was your mind always in the same place? Were the missions always, quote unquote, the same? Like when you would come home, so you're back in the States now, and you get into your cleansing moment of being either in the river or reading or in your cabin, like, did you ever struggle with having your mind come back to center? Like, was it ever just take longer or worse, or you dip into center and dip out of center into chaos? And like, did you ever struggle finding, like, losing your way?
Yeah, I think, I think that's pretty easily, it's easy to do. It takes self-discipline. Yeah. And I had to discipline myself in order to bring myself back to center. Like I need this psychologically more than ever. And I would get pretty angry if I didn't have it. Like I would get more and more angry because I'd be further and further and further away from what I knew mattered. And when I say that, like the context of the environment and happiness and kind of when happiness for me is not something like you can't build it on the second. It's a culmination of a lot of seconds and a lot of minutes and a lot of hard work, right? And you've talked about it, like the barrier of entry to, getting out and experiencing a hunt in the environment. It takes a lot of hard work, and you enjoy the experience much more. And for me, I found the same thing. Like I actually had to go and put myself through a fucking physical grinder. Like I needed that. I needed to be able to grind myself into moon dust to come out the other side. And I would do that every 3 to 4 months. I'd have to. Yep. And it's not that I had to. I shouldn't say that. Like nobody had a gun to my head. I just knew that eventually this would really come in handy. And when I say that, the minutes or the seconds they turn into minutes, and those minutes turn into hours. Those hours turns into days and years. And I had to have that. And happiness, for like the American context of happiness, is instant gratification, and those seconds actually just contribute to ill health, and whether that's physical or psychological, because we're just feeding ourselves anything that we want. It's just everything and anything, but as much as I can pour it on. So, AC and heat and fast food and, fast cars and fucking sex and everything else that you can put in, you're just putting it in as fast as you can. Yeah. And I think that you've actually got to take it away.
Yep. Yeah. And that's where we thrive, right?
Yeah.
We thrive with that, the removal, and thrive with the suffering. Like it's really, just feeling the burn and being cold and being scared. And I've never been in a military scenario, but I've slept in a few places in my life where I wasn't sure if I was going to get snatched out of my tent by wildlife. Or, and I've spent a little bit of time in areas where there's a lot of pirates, but, I also had machine guns. So it was fairsies, if you will, but still it didn't make for a peaceful night.
Fear is fear, man. Fear is fear. And I think that, that's the one thing that I can take back. And sometimes I think that's a real unique quality when I look at your content, your films, and the authenticity that you bring is you're actually ripping everything apart and trying to show people a portion of your soul. It's a very soulful and passionate piece of content. And if you look at it, it's art because it's life. And I don't want to overanalyze it and get too spiritual. I'm just saying, like, I think that's the big differentiating factor is when you're being soulful and you're showing something, a piece of art, something that you've built, you've suffered for. Yeah. There's a huge difference in that piece of content.
Yeah, yeah. And I love it. I love making it, but I love sharing it, like sitting in, and maybe this is the ego part of it, but sitting in an audience and playing the film, and then just, like you can't manufacture silence, right? So you just see an audience just silent, listening, and you can see that they're uneasy. They're not settled into their chairs, they're just, and I just think it's really cool because it's as though, if I were a billionaire, I'm never ever going to own a mansion. I'll never own a speedboat. I'll never own a Ferrari. If I had $5 billion, I wouldn't own any of those things ever. But what I would do is I would take people with me to the places that I get to go, because I would feed off of their experiences and seeing these new places. And so being in the theater, suffering for the work and like pouring it in and trying to be honest with myself and then the audience, and then seeing people's reactions to it, it's very fulfilling to take them there, especially because if you can take somebody there that can't get there themselves,
Well, yeah, you've taken me there. Like you've
wicked,
done that. Yeah,
wicked.
It's fucking badass.
Yeah,
like
and that's hugely rewarding. Yeah.
And it's the only film, like I can't sit down and watch. I don't even watch hunting shows, because they're ridiculously dumb to me. Yeah. Not that they're.
Yeah, I get it.
It's just it's. I don't need to see somebody kill a deer from a tree stand. I don't need to see somebody just kill to kill and see it high five. I'm not taking away from their experience whatsoever. It's just like, yeah, it's not for me, man. I want to feel like I'm there. Mm-hmm. I want to feel the bark on the tree. Mm-hmm. I want to listen to the pine needles slide across the ground as I'm trying to, get up and over around a tree. I want to feel the rocks slide underneath my feet as I'm, going across a scree ledge. Like I want to feel that because I'm not there, and I want to be there.
I wrote this, and I wish I knew her name, but freshman English that I took at the University of Minnesota. I had to write a couple of stories, and I wrote these stories for my professor, as a young lady. And I wrote these stories how beautifully I thought they could be written. And when I handed them in, she's like, yeah, you're telling me what you want me to feel.
Right.
It's like, you're robbing me of this experience. You're telling me exactly where you want the audience throughout your story. Why don't you just tell me what's going on and let my mind go there itself? So why don't you describe the scenario to me in a fashion that not, you don't have to say this room has white walls and a white ceiling, and, you can describe it in a manner of, we walked into a room that was very clinical. We walked into a room that was clearly undone and very sterile and very clinical and hadn't had color yet. And so it's a totally different way to describe something where you can say, yeah, we were in his office and on the walls were white and the ceiling was white. And so she kind of taught me how to write, and it was fiction that I was writing, but she taught me how to write it that way. And I wish I knew her name because it just resonated with me. And the other thing that resonated is because I was hunting then too.
Right.
And one time I wrote to her that I harvested a deer, and this has stayed with me forever. But she's like, you didn't harvest a deer, you killed it. You killed it. You're a hunter. You killed it. You didn't harvest it. You harvested a soybean. You killed that deer. So. I've used it a couple of times inadvertently, but I've stopped using, from her encouragement, I stopped using the word harvest because I felt like it was trying to turn what we were doing into something that was beige, trying to remove the harshness of, oh yes, I harvested this deer. She's like, no, you literally ran an arrow or a bullet through its lungs. You killed this animal. And she's like, be proud of that, that rawness of it. Like own it. Just be honest with me. Tell me what you did, and I'm okay with it. And even if I'm not okay with it, thank you for telling me up to my face, And so, like, I always thought that the two of the things that I took from freshman English.
How long ago was that?
A long time ago, early 2000s. I was a late student because I had to pay for it myself. So I bought my first house when I was 18. And that made life extremely real, extremely fast. And so